This is Pete Moore on Halo Talks NYC. I have the pleasure of bringing a friend of mine for 20 plus years in the health club industry, straight from Syracuse, ex Gold's Gym, now Elevate Fitness. Tom Muller, good to have you on the show.
Great to be with you, Pete. It's been a long run, hasn't it?
It has. I mean, I was the junior guy at Bronco and Miranda Partners and started meeting all the Gold's Gym owners. And I met you and Peter back in the day, and we were trying to keep that Gold's Gym flag alive. And then, a lot of people debranded or de-identified, and you guys were one of the culprits of that. Just say like, hey, I'm not sure this brand kind of fits my box anymore. And you've come a long way since then. So why don't you give a little background on yourself, and that you worked with Peter and then bought him out, and what you guys got going on there with Elevate.
Yeah, so I've been in the business since 1982. I started with Health and Tennis Corporation down in Houston, Texas. So that's where I really learned the fitness business. Moved up to Syracuse in 1988, started consulting and managing the clubs for Peter, and purchased the clubs from him in 2005. So
and I was just up there just to give a shout out to my nephew, who's now a Syracuse resident, freshman year at Syracuse University. I was just up there and toured the clubs from what you started out with the Gold's Gyms. One of the things that kind of struck me is like the size of the location that you have and the amount of amenities and programs that you're running there. Give us a little bit of background on how that evolved and how the facilities kind of morphed over time.
Yeah, the cool thing is we were both the clubs were originally built as 8 indoor tennis court facilities back in the late 70s. And they've just, the cool thing about the clubs, the size, we've been able to evolve them with the times. Is we stay current with trends and those kinds of things. So we started taking out tennis courts. Before my time, Peter put in racquetball. Remember the racquetball phase?
Sure.
And then in the late 80s, I was actually just traveling through town, and Peter was looking to really get into the fitness. So he just expanded the fitness areas. One of the clubs, he added an indoor pool. And he's just really trying to figure out how to compete with Bally's. Bally's was the major competitor at the time. And so I moved in, and we really competed with Bally's very successfully. And we just kind of evolved the clubs from there.
Yeah. So when you go into the location, it definitely looks like, there's a lot of square footage under, a big rooftop. What are some of the things that you've been most excited about on the morphing of, legacy staying with the tennis, but really like kind of repurposing the facility?
Well, I think that the thing that I'm most excited about is really the trend back to strength. Kind of reminds me of the early Gold's Gym days where, people, girls, guys really training hard, lifting weights. A lot of really cool, unique pieces coming into the industry. And it's really cool to see everybody's strength training, because I think that's the basis of fitness anyway. It's really strong and that kind of training.
Yeah. So, when I went into the clubs, it seems like you've got a pretty big fitness floor, and you're also kind of, tearing down drywall as you kind of repurpose some of the old racquetball courts to the point where it doesn't really feel like, it was an old racquetball, court. But you said you got Pilates coming in now, I think on our last visit. And what are some of the other things you're doing to kind of serve the community, but maybe a broader swath of the community?
Well, the strength of the clubs have always been our programming aspects. We have a strong personal training program at both clubs. Our Group X is extremely strong. We have, really strong classes, group power, bar classes, yoga, Pilates. We have a Pilates studio that we have. So we do a lot of reformer classes with that. We actually just took out spinning, which is spinning a good run for a long time, but that seems to have passed by. So we've purposed that into personal training studio, and we've opened up some other areas of turf for the members to use.
Mm-hmm. A lot of the clubs that around the country, are either trying to expand and add more square footage. Your clubs are 70,000 square feet. You've got pools in there as well. If I was to do an analogy and say, like, elevates kind of like the lifetime fitness of the Syracuse market. Is that an accurate depiction of what you guys are kind of, positioned as?
No, I think that's exactly it. And yeah, with our strong programming, with tennis, we really own the tennis market. Our only competition is Syracuse University, and we even compete really well with them, even though it's subsidized by the university. So, the key to our longevity has been our staff, our programs, and being able to just see where the wind's blowing and kind of navigate to that area.
Mhm. Now, let's talk about the software changeover. A lot of people have been on, legacy and good software companies, but you kind of said, I gotta do more for the members and I want to track more data. And I think you've been probably one of the leaders in saying, I can only manage my business as well as I can measure it. So talk about what you did with Zenoti, why you made that change, and how that's the early wins on that.
Well, when we left Gold's Gym, I think one of the problems with Gold's Gym is we were really limited in the software, the website, all of the technology. I felt really restrained. So when we left Gold's Gym and we created the Elevate brand, I really wanted to be tech focused and really focus on the technology to service the members and drive the business. So with that, we had. Before we moved to Zenoti, we were operating with um, two different operating platforms, ABC and Club Automation. We had smart health clubs for our app. We had gym sales for our CRM program and like three or four other ones. So I've always been looking for just a one single platform that would communicate and run efficiently. And I think the Zenoti really fills that bucket.
And what are some of the things that you've been able to do? You've obviously you run a pretty sophisticated operation with a lot of different programs. You got a pro shop, you got a cafe overlooking the tennis courts. So what are some of the things? Not that this is an infomercial for Zenoti, but what are some of the things that, like you said, hey, these are some of the things I can do now, and that I can track that I was maybe it was a little hard pressed to kind of do within my prior tech stack.
Well, I think one of the things is having the app and the platform running as one. One of the things that we try to do, I think a lot of clubs have kind of followed this trend, is having layered memberships. So we have a three-tiered membership, and trying to obviously upsell people, create the value for them to want to be on the higher level. The other software companies wouldn't really allow us to really make sure that we can manage the benefits. So in both clubs, we had a recovery center. We have different memberships that have access. So we wanted to make sure that we support that and control that. We also want to give, benefits to promote things. So when somebody joins the club now, we can give them a free smoothie, and that can be integrated in with the system. So we can start driving things. We can say, hey, for the month you haven't upgraded to the recovery center, we're going to give you a free month of recovery, and now we can track and monitor that and monetize it. We can also, have them buy a class pass. So if they're on a level 1 membership and they don't have classes, they could buy a package and have class access. That's such a robust system. We're really kind of in the early stages of really, implementing and driving it. And I really see over the next 90 days, really driving it to implement and drive the behaviors of the members and drive the revenue.
So I've become I'm a New York Giants fan, but because the Bills are in New York State, I've also become like a affiliate of the Buffalo Bills Mafia,
Oh, you have to be a Bills
for a
fan.
New York team. The one thing about Northern New York that people don't fully understand is that there's not a lot of people flocking down to South Carolina and Florida and like snowbirds, but it seems like a very very stable market. Over time, there's a lot of investment that comes in from big companies. Maybe talk about like what's Micron's doing in town and just like what you've been able to kind of buffer by being up in Syracuse that maybe other markets don't have, such a volatile swing, whether it's on housing or mortgages or you might be the bigger demographic, but you also got to deal with like the ups and downs of those markets.
Yeah, Joe Remy in Buffalo, who owns Catalyst Fit, is a good friend of mine. We're always talking about Syracuse and Buffalo, And we don't have the dynamic markets where you have the big economies. So we've had to navigate that. So both Buffalo and Syracuse are pretty stable at this point. A lot of the manufacturing left in the 80s and 90s, and just and one of the clubs, like 2 seconds from Liverpool, Amazon just built a big distribution place. Micron is the biggest thing to come to New York in, I think, decades. So it's $1 billion plant that they're building literally 8 minutes from the Liverpool location. So if they really do a good job with Micron, just Micron itself is a huge investment and opportunity for Syracuse, but all of the suppliers that are going to come in to support that big chip manufacturing plant that they're going to be building.
So, when you take a look at the demographics of Syracuse, obviously you got an influx of new 18 to 22-year-olds with the university, at your doorstep. You also got a pretty vibrant athletics program in and around the area that are feeding into some of these D1, D2, and D3 schools. How has the demographics either changed, or how do you feel about, bringing in more strength equipment, which usually brings in more, younger demos that kind of reframes like what Elevate stands for?
Yeah, I think we're excited about that market. It's like I think it's like 45% are below the age of 40, 45 in Syracuse. So what we're trying to do with the strength equipment is really have a product where the kids that are going to Crunch now, or they're going to Planet, see the value, and they're willing to spend an extra $20, $30 a month to have a really quality fitness area. So we're really excited about it, and that's where we're going to be investing some money into, like Real Leader, bringing some really specific high-end brands of strength equipment in.
Yeah. And then from a standpoint, Micron, by the way, for the audience here, is a small $230 billion business that is, made a commitment to Syracuse, demographic market area, which, is not I'm sure they shopped around for a lot of different areas before they built that plant. I don't know if you know the chronology of that, but how long has that been in the works?
I think it's been in the works for like last 5, 6 years. And the place is going to be massive, and really high-end paying jobs that are going to be there. And I think Micron's going to go all in. They're already have started working with all the, like, Syracuse for education, trying to develop the workforce locally, and that's what we want to see when a Micron or these big companies move into an area, is having them support and kind of cultivate the community along with it. You hear these projects like that have gone into, Buffalo as an example. The $1 billion went into Buffalo. That didn't go anywhere because they didn't have the community behind it. They didn't develop the community support.
Gotcha. You're kind of an atypical club owner where you also, have your own lease, and you own the real estate up there. How did that kind of evolve over time, and what kind of flexibility does that give you on thinking about capital improvement projects that other people might, kind of look at their lease and say, this is my responsibility, is the landlord's responsibility? How do you kind of look at opportunities that are maybe longer term in nature that kind of solidifies, what you're building there?
I think from my perspective, I think that's the only way to really own and operate clubs, is if you own the real estate, especially in a smaller market like Syracuse. So, people always ask me, "Are you going to build another club? Going to build another club?" And I said, "Well, not really, because we kind of support the market. We have the clubs are on opposite ends of the clubs, on opposite ends of town, and I think that the biggest thing that most people don't understand about the fitness business is the amount of capex it takes to keep the club up and fresh. We're always competing with the new club coming in the market. Everybody likes the bright and shiny new club, and I think we've done a decent job of keeping our capex up, staying relevant, having the clubs new. I mean, they're built in the '70s, and I don't think when you walked in, you probably didn't think you were going back in the '70s. And we're
Correct.
we continue to do that, and we're going to continue to invest in capex to keep the clubs fresh and new. You have to do it. And by owning
Yeah.
the real estate, it gives me the opportunity, because I know we're raising the value of that. So it's really kind of a game changer.
So when you take a look at how you pricing the memberships. You got family memberships, you got couple memberships. What's the price point that a Syracuse market can take, and the value, the price to value proposition. How do you think about that?
Well, I think one of the things we're trying to get to an average of $50 to $55 per month per member. We just when we went to Zenoti, we went to biweekly billing, which has gone really well for us. So I think that's going to definitely add in the membership dues revenue. I think when you're in a small market, you're not going to increase your revenue by volume of sales. You're going to increase it by revenue per member, and so that's what we're completely focused on is revenue per member.
And then what about the annual maintenance fee? How do you think about that?
Annual maintenance fee is it's a something that it's just everybody charges, so it's not an issue with competition. We're moving from $49 to $59, which is not going to be an issue. And I think because we do a good job of bringing in new programs, investing in the clubs, I think the members see it, so they know that I'm not putting it in my pocket. I'm reinvesting in the club.
Sure. One thing about having a big club, 70,000 square foot club, and you have new equipment coming in, and you're repurposing space. I feel like it gives you a lot more latitude on what you could charge or substantiate the annual maintenance fee versus some of these smaller, 15, 20,000 square foot, express gyms or HVLP, where
Yeah.
it's basically just a way for them not to raise rates, and more of just like an EBITDA grab, if you
Yes.
will,
Yeah.
as a new term. So when you look at 55 a month for what you get inside of your club, when competition does come in, like, is it more of like good luck type of thing, like trying to outdo what I got under 140,000 square feet in two locations that kind of buffer, bookend the market?
Um, I think I'm a big proponent of cumulative advantage, and I think that as long as we have um, as long as we're first in the market with these kinds of products, I don't think people really pay attention to it. So I think part of the CapEx strategy is that cumulative advantage. As long as you keep the members engaged, they're not going to really be looking for something else. And I think because of the size of our clubs, and we've been a business since the '70s. As long as you keep your eye on the ball, stay focused on what the trends are and what the future is, it's a cumulative advantage, and it's a huge advantage compared to the other clubs that are coming in. We have the Crunches, we have the Planets, we have Big Ys, and you just kind of have to do an analysis of what their strengths are, figure out what your strengths are, and then make sure that you focus on your strengths and minimize your weaknesses.
When you take a look at just the tennis program, tennis kind of has gone through different ebbs and flows, and I feel like tennis is like back in fashion now, or back in vogue. I think that there's a lot of data that shows that from a cardio and longevity standpoint, like tennis is the most recommended sport for people to play.
Yeah.
I think some people like tailed off into like padel and to pickleball, but tennis isn't going anywhere. So talk about like the strength of the tennis program, your conviction about tennis as a sport.
Yeah, tennis is here to stay. When you look at the amount of money that, the Cleveland Open just put $350 million into their facilities. You look at what they're investing in the UST invested in the facilities in New York City, and just the growth of tennis. I think since COVID, it's up like 30% or something like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of leveled off a little bit, but the key to tennis, and I think the key to operating the clubs that we have, is all about having the right staff and having the right programs. And that's where we're really the leaders, is we have the best pro staff. We have kids that we're developing. They're going on to play D1 schools. We have Lemoyne College that plays out of our facilities. So it's all about taking those members and giving them good quality lessons, having them good quality leagues, USTA, all those things make a really vibrant tennis program, and tennis has been ever since I've been involved, our most stable part of our business.
Yeah, and then also talk about swim because every kid needs to learn how to swim anywhere or across the country, and that seems to be there's a lot more focus on that. There's some franchises now that have been launched. I know like Big Blue Swim School, and I think there's even some in New York City that like took some retail space that I thought was crazy. But there's clearly a big market, and people will pay to get their kids certified. And also, I think swimming as a sport and modality is going to get even more and more exposure from whether it's Olympics or whether it's like they end up setting up some kind of pro swim league.
Yeah.
Talk about that as well, since you maintain 2 pools.
Yeah, we have a really vibrant swim lesson program, and again, even with the pools, it's really all about programming. So we certainly have lap swimming available, but we really focus on swim lessons and classes and those kinds of things. And we've been really successful at it. And again, it's having the right person. We have an excellent aquatics director. We have we compete with the Ys, and people are willing. We have waiting lists for people to come and take swim lessons with us when it's almost for free at the Y.
Mm-hmm. And then from a standpoint of the Elevate, brand name, you have that. You obviously have that registered in New York State. Is that something that you're able to take outside the state if you ever came across an opportunity to either buy or rebrand or affiliate with another club?
Oh, I think definitely, absolutely, yeah, yep. I think that'd be extremely easy to do. Yep.
Yeah. And then, how do you feel about Syracuse sports? It seemed like there was a good football season that started. Maybe that might not go as well according to plan, but I think the basketball program's got Carmelo Anthony's son playing, so it should be a good year up at the Carrier Dome.
Yeah, very, very excited about basketball. Unfortunately, our quarterback got hurt, who's a dynamic player, so that's what unfortunately happened this year with football. But yeah, basketball is going to be interesting. It's they have some tough shoes to fill with Boeheim. I mean, living here since 1988, I've seen some great basketball, some great football, and hopefully we'll be back to that this year with basketball.
Yeah. So you've dedicated your life to the Halo sector. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Over the next couple of years, as you get involved in other, Rex roundtables and you kind of share the learnings that you had, do you have any quote that you live by, or like words of wisdom for those people that are in the industry that maybe much younger than you and me, to say like this is why you should dedicate your life to this profession?
Yeah, my quote is I learned a long time ago from a guy, Carl Savani, in the fitness business. Grow where you've been planted. And I think a lot of times people are looking for, the grass is always greener on the other side. And I think if you take the approach of growing where you're planted, become a master at what you're doing, I think there's so many opportunities that come your way. And if you really are a true expert at what you're doing, you'll see those opportunities that might be small, but they can turn into something big if you really kind of just grow where you've been planted. And
like that.
So that's what I've lived by, and that's what I kind of coach the kids by.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Good to see you. Look forward to seeing you in person. And I'll be up there if there's any Uncle Days up at Syracuse. I'll swing by and get a workout and wear my Elevate white T-shirt.
All right, sounds good. Look forward to it.
All right, awesome. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks so much.